Stefano. I'm so excited to share with you today the big change of the garden this summer. It's all the flowers. It was something that means a lot to me. It was to bring more biodiversity, more colors, because the garden looked really green, really like beautiful, but it was missing those colors. I could see some, like as soon as there was few flowers around, like the fruit trees blooming or the elderberries, all the bees were crazy for them, and you could see that they were just craving more flowers around. So I did interplant, integrate in many ways the flowers I could in the garden. So I did plant at the end of the row some fuchsias, or even this is a kind of a wild tomatoes that I planted here as well. The sunflowers with the pumpkin. I can show you more examples. And then there is also the flowers coming from the vegetable itself, like those beans here. It's variety with like pink, orange flowers, and the other one are more white, yellow. And so I'm trying to have also different colors, because I know that some insects are more love different colors. See, so since I have all those flowers blooming everywhere, I can really see the difference with the bees and the bumblebees being always around. But not only those, there is also different insects which are beneficial for the vegetables, because I have sometimes a little bit of aphid here and there, or there is the whiteflies, and those beneficial insects are here already and eat the pollen. So when you have a bad insect coming in your crop, they're already here to fight them, to eat them. So that's why it's really important to have those all year long, as much as you can, to be able to feed them and to establish them in your garden. We want to increase the biodiversity not only with pollinators and beneficial insects, but also with birds, because they help to balance the pests and all the insects in the garden. So what I've also noticed is, as soon as I have structures like this for the beans or for the cucumbers, like or just simple sticks, the birds perch on them, and so they have a nice view and they can dive to the insect, for example. And I also noticed a little rock in the corner of the garden that was full of empty shells around them, snail shells. And because they need this rock to open the shells and eat the snail, I found it so great, and that I decided to put rocks everywhere in the garden. And then another thing is to avoid the birds to drink from your fruit that are growing in the garden. For example, the tomatoes. Sometimes you wonder why you have a hole in the tomatoes, but the tomatoes seem fine. It's because just the bird is so thirsty in those dry, hot summer that they need water around. And that's why I decided to bring bird baths in. So I have a couple in different space of the garden. And then what I also saw is like just a leaf next to the bird bath just fall in the water, and then it actually helped the insects to drink from it, because you don't want them to drown in it. So that's why, or you have a rock inside, or you have leaves hanging in there, and then it's actually pretty handy for everybody. So for interplanting, one of the famous one that is pretty well known is having the cucumbers climbing on the string. When you have lettuce, like small onion growing on the side. So here I choose lettuces, and on the other side I had radishes, like those French breakfast style small radishes that grow also really fast. So the idea is, like, there is different things to be aware of when you do intercropping. Is the cycle of the crop and the final size of the crop, and then the need of shade or full sun, the need of water and fertilizer. So I have another example with here the beetroot. At this season the beetroot grow really fast, and then so in between I did transplant fennel, that both are really hungry crops, like big feeders. And the fennel can handle a little bit of shade at the beginning. As soon as the tip of their leaves is in the sun, the fennel is actually fine. And then by the time I harvest the beetroot, the fennel will have all the space to grow bigger and all the sun. And another thing is also water. You have to be careful that when you plant your garden, because I use sprinklers or oscillators, I try, and this is something I'm really more aware this year, is to make sure that, like in a square, for example, like the surface of the oscillators or sprinkler is vegetable that have the same needs in water. So I don't overwater some veggies that don't need so much, or not underwater some veggies that need more. So I did the mistake at the beginning of spring when I had the turnips between the potatoes and the melon, and the melon got a root disease because they got overwatered. That's why it's something that you really have to be aware of. Another example of interplanting is, here I have the turnips that I direct sow, and then in the middle I also direct sow zinnia. So it's another way to bring flowers among your garden. It's like having them in between your vegetables, because anyway the zinnia will grow tall and the turnip will be on the side, so they will have, both will find their place in this row. And then here I have another example, which is so I have a new batch of zucchini coming in the middle row, which in between I put nasturtium because they can cover the soil as they grow, and then the zucchini will just, as you know, just grow tall. It's not climbing. And then on each side there is those Chinese cabbage that grow really fast at the moment too. So by the time the zucchini is big enough, the Chinese cabbage should be harvested. So those are also first time I try them, but I believe it has to work, because it should work. A third example of intercropping is the broccoli rub were transplanted in the middle of the carrots that I planted maybe a month before, and then I actually had to sow again the carrots on the outside because they didn't germinate well. But I noticed that it was actually really nice to have the broccoli rub in the middle, because at this time of the year, where the soil dry out really fast, and for the carrots I don't want to mulch them because it's not nice for roots vegetable to be mulched. They actually provide the shade to keep the soil moisture, and then it allows the carrots to germinate better and then like more homogeneous because of the shade from the leaves of the broccoli rub. I harvest them once a week. I'm not 100% sure I grow them the good way, the broccoli rub. I'm never really happy with the result of the plant, but we do have a nice crop from them. And so every week when I harvest them, I take off all the big leaves from the side that can provide too much shade for the carrots at one point, and then because usually they are not looking nice anyway, the plants still have enough for the photosynthesis, and there is a gap between the carrots and the leaves of the broccoli rub, so they can still be aerated and still get some sun. So it's not completely shaded, but it does keep more moisture through the day, through the hot day, and allow the carrot to come up nicely. And you can see they came up nicely. So this is the last bed I sown a couple of weeks ago, 10 days maybe, with the same principle of the cover crop and then the radishes in between. And then this time I integrated crimson clover because I heard a lot about it, and so I was like, why don't grow it still? So it's to have also in my covers, in my green manures, as you can also call them, I try to have different species because they all have a different role, and some have deep roots so they can break the soil. Some have those nodules, like from the legume family, like the clover, for example. So they bring nitrogen from the air to the soil. And then some, like the phacelia and the buckwheat, they're loved by the bees because of their flowers. But they also have an allelopathic effect that stop the weed to grow so much, a lot like the tithonia. So that's why also I think it's not good to have them growing too tall, too high between the vegetable that you want to harvest, because they might have an impact on the vegetables. So that's something that you have to keep in mind when you interplant those. So here, for example, it's where I waited too long to cut the buckwheat. It was nice, beautiful, full of flowers and full of insects, and then I should have just cut it earlier because of the sun and maybe the allelopathic effects of those buckwheat on the radishes. Here is another example with beetroots. They are really looking healthy and beautiful, with their but not have their true leaves yet, so I'm gonna wait until they're a bit more fully developed, maybe 10 centimeters high, to cut the buckwheat down. And so when you get the timing right, it's a really powerful technique to use, so because it has so many good effects. So you have the pollination part, you have also food for the soil with the cover crop that you're gonna cut and leave on the spot, or feed another soil, another bed from it. You have, so it's a nice, beautiful nursery crop as well. And does also the root system of the plant also work as a decompaction, and then is the weed suppressing. So the main principle I use in the garden is no till as much as possible. So it means that we don't use the rotatiller anymore at all. And the other is always covering the soil in the pathways or on the bed, with different techniques. It can be covered by plants themselves, like we just spoke about before, the cover crops. It could be green manure fully on the bed without vegetables. It could be mulch, like here you have bamboo mulch. It could be the flame trees that I use in winter because we don't have hay around, and then in summertime I mostly use hay, also because the crops are turning faster, so hay decomposes faster than wood chip and bamboo. And then actually last winter, all the bed I covered with a flame tree wood chip. They look gorgeous in spring. They were just a texture, just like so smooth. I just had to weed a little bit, not even much. It was like really quick weeding, and then just plant the next crop. It was just amazing. And the fact that covering your soil in winter is even more important because it rains a lot, and it does compact the soil even more here that we have a clay soil. I could see the difference when there was a root crop that was almost gone, like the bed was getting empty because we harvest as we need. The soil was a bit harder than where the bed were fully covered by the mulch till or by the plant. No tilling, no digging, as much as I can, move on from one crop to the other one without having to interfere in the soil to disturb the life of the soil, because this is something that we care a lot about, and it's really important to not disturb it as much as possible. Yeah, so that's how we do it. I'm really happy to share all those knowledge, observation, interaction with the garden, the flowers, the biodiversity of the garden. It makes me really happy, and then I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.